Now this is a flyer that was found at Watchung Reservation on Monday, the 22nd, and as you can see, it's fairly detailed. It's color. It's two-sided. It's a glossy, shiny paper. There's a lot of detail that went into this this flyer, and I guess I'm trying to figure out how they got it designed on Friday, between Friday morning and Friday afternoon. Got the design approved, printed up sufficient numbers, and then distributed them to kiosks throughout the park and maybe the other parks as well. I don't know how they did that. I'd be very interested to learn. And the reason I bring this up is because the vote to disprove and discontinue the mountain bike trail plan at Watchung, the mountain bike trail plan that was already approved and paid for, by the way, with our tax money, and that they've been promising us they would, trail access is just around the corner if you just bear with us and wait. Yeah, well, people will never be that patient again, trust me. But yeah, they've been promising us for over 3 years, it's just around the corner, it's just around the corner. Yeah, that trail plan, that's the one they canceled. But the vote to kill it took place on Thursday night, and the meeting went late into the night because there were a lot of people who supported the idea of mountain bike access, but there were also a large number of loud and, I would say, fairly ignorant people who didn't know anything about cycling, but more importantly, didn't care to learn. And I guess they thought they should have veto power over the knowledgeable. I don't know. It's usually what happens. But here's the thing. They had this vote late Thursday night. Now, Monday, these are distributed around county parks, along with the various other things that are relatively new developments in attempts to enforce Watchung's 20-year-old and extra-legal mountain bike ban that was imposed in a backroom meeting of unelected officials with no legislative authority and no public input. And perhaps more importantly, no documentation of any widespread problem with mountain biking at Watchung at the time. This was according to information from the government's own Open Record Act requests. Oh, and this ordinance that they quote on here, no person shall operate a bicycle on a roadway except as a thoroughfare, no person shall operate a bicycle upon the sidewalk, footpath, footbridge, bridle path, except those that are specifically set aside and marked for bicycle use. And then they don't finish the quote, but this ordinance finishes up with, and no one shall drive in such a way as to impede vehicle traffic, meaning motor vehicles, meaning cars. So what you have is it's essentially about roads, sidewalks, paths, and cars. What does that have to do with mountain biking in the woods on a narrow dirt trail? Does that sound to anybody like it would be? No. Which is why when you find out that this ordinance actually wasn't passed in 1995 when the mountain bike ban was created, because the mountain bike ban, of course, was created by the unelected who don't have the authority to pass ordinances. This ordinance is from 1983, and it had nothing to do with mountain biking until sometime in the 90s, after 1995, somebody thought about it and said, well, gee, this is kind of about where you can ride your bike. Let's say this is what we use to justify banning mountain biking. I think that's really all that happened. But the point is, at the end of the day, it does quote an ordinance, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. And it talks about other stuff, and there's different colors, and it's a detailed brochure, even though it's long on myth and short on facts. I mean, if this was, in the library, it would be filed under maybe historical fiction. But the point is, there's still a lot of material on it, and a lot of work went into creating it. And my question, I guess, is, you can look at this and say, well, it's ugly, or I might have made different font choices, or, why do you have to use that color ink? But the point is, at the end of the day, or, maybe I have a better clip art picture of a bicycle than that. I mean, Jesus, I think like a 5-year-old could draw a better bicycle. But the point is that whether you like the artwork and the text or not, or approve of it, the point is, a lot of work did go into producing this. So my question is, do you think they were able to do all of that, plus print up copies of it, plus distribute them to kiosks at the park, and, trailhead signboards at the park, and possibly other county parks as well, all on the space of Friday? between Friday morning and maybe 4 or 4:30 when they all went home Friday afternoon. Somehow I doubt it. That they would design something like this from scratch, get approval for the overall look, get approval in particular for the wording and the ordinances they quoted and all sorts of stuff, and then get it finalized and then approved again, and then get it printed up, and then distribute the copies, have somebody actually drive out to the park or whatever and post them. I don't think you could get all that done on Friday. All right, I think it would take most of Friday just to approve the overall layout. Especially since this is a contentious issue where many people like myself are rightly pointing out that according to what the government itself has said in previous Open Record Act requests, there is no friggin' law against mountain biking. And that this ordinance about sidewalks and roads and stuff was basically misapplied without ever changing what the ordinance said to put anything about mountain biking in there. I mean, they just kind of took it and all agreed to pretend it meant something else. Whether you agree with that, the point is that there are people who are pointing out various critiques of the 20-year history of the ban, which the county, again, admitted was imposed without any public input in a back room by the unelected. So you think that if they're going to put a flyer out to try and whitewash this and justify the ban, that they're going to look very carefully at what it says, because they know people who either, one, want to ride their bikes there, or two, are interested in the kind of misgovernment and shenanigans that go on with imposing a policy in secret, are looking to nitpick, the dot on every I and the cross on every T and so forth, as it were. So I don't think they would even be able to get the wording approved on Friday, starting from scratch in a hasty, they come in Friday morning and they hear from their colleagues that, the vote approved killing mountain biking, so there's not going to be any mountain biking access. All the mountain bikers are going to be very upset, and people may try to ride there. What are you going to do? Well, let's just print up flyers and do other things to start enforcing, to show people that we're serious and we don't want them to ride there, to discourage it. Well, how do you do that? Well, we have to print up the flyers. Okay, what do you want them to say? And that's where you get into it, and from there, for the rest of the day, it's a discussion about the wording. And whenever somebody brings up, well, let's have it say this. Oh, but, people have questioned that. Well, let's have it say this. Well, okay, we got to run it by the legal counsel or the county spokesman or whomever. Maybe the person they call isn't at his extension. Maybe he's away talking to somebody else about some other thing. They got to wait till he calls back or whatever. So I don't think they could get the wording approved and the overall design approved in one fucking day. All right? Let alone maybe they could. The county apparently printed up its own no new bike signs, which used similar, extremely crude bike logos. So maybe they could get it done in, between Friday morning and Friday afternoon. But even assuming they got it done by Friday afternoon, would they be able to get it distributed by then? And what about the county police bringing down this lighted sign that flashes a message? Leaving aside the fact that the lighted sign might be better served posted somewhere where people are, let's say, driving drunk or talking on cell phones, warning them not to do that, rather than what they've now done, which is posted at the bottom of Skycut Drive near Interstate 78, as people come off and go towards the park, with a warning that says, mountain bikers will be prosecuted. And I'm sitting there, when I saw this, I was like, this is what they're spending our tax money on, really? It's bad enough they're telling us we can't ride in the park for what are essentially spurious reasons, but then they have the audacity to try and perpetuate those myths and misperceptions using our own money? I mean, really. Well, this is your tax dollars at work as well. But I don't think it's just a question, what's in it or the style choices. I think it's important to point out that this is a fairly complicated, double-sided, multicolored flyer or brochure or pamphlet, whatever you want to call it. And I don't think they could have designed, printed up, and distributed all of these from scratch on Friday. What does that mean? They had to have started before the vote, which means what? Well, a very good argument could be made that they would only go to that trouble if they knew that the vote was going to be to disapprove of mountain biking. In other words, that it wasn't maybe free and open process, but that maybe the thing was rigged, as some people want to have say about politics. Maybe they knew in advance which way the vote was going to go, and that's why they already had these ready to distribute. Because I don't think they could have physically gotten these produced and printed and distributed by Monday morning, if they started on Friday morning. I don't think it's possible. So my question is, who made these? How much of our tax money did they spend on it? And when did they make them? Because if they made them before the vote, whether they made them last week or last month, if they made them before the March 18th vote, that means that that whole thing, the evening of March 18th, was a sham. That there was never an intention to give the idea of mountain biking at Watchung a chance, and that they knowingly lied to everybody for 3 years. It's brought us along for 3 years, which is disgraceful. And I think in the future, anytime anybody in the county wants to be taken seriously, whether they want volunteers to help out with something at one of the parks, whether they want people to simply stop snickering and actually believe a press release, I think they should look to this moment. They should look to the moment on March 18th when they basically screwed over everybody and lied to them. And I think they should think long and hard about that, because those kind of decisions have consequences. And, you know, if they had just told everybody 3 years ago, we're not going to let you into the park, that's fine. At least then we know where we stand. And if somebody wants to maybe have a legal challenge to the ordinance or to the government's, I should say, unordinance, as it were, or whatever, maybe try and get access somewhere else. Who knows? But the point is that if they had told us 3 years ago, yeah, we're not going to let you in the park, that's fine. We'll find another solution, whatever that other solution might be. It might be to try and challenge the government's policy. It might be to, try and vote those people out and get other people in. It might be to look for park access somewhere else. Who knows? But the point is, at least we would have known where we stood. And instead, we were misled for 3 years, which I think is not. People could sit there and say, well, how naive do you think you are? I mean, it's Union County after all, right? Yes, it's Union County, but it's Union County that specifically looked you in the eye, shook your hand across the table, and said, don't worry, access is just around the corner. And I was skeptical at first, too. In fact, I remember after the first meeting, when they then blew us off and we didn't hear anything from them for almost a year, I remember sitting there saying to myself, God damn it, I wish I had brought a recording device to the meeting. I didn't, Well, what can I say? I wish I had. But the point is, now we're in a position where they have screwed us over, and they should think about that, because this is now the face of Union County. And I don't just mean the no-bite stuff. I mean the fact that this glossy, double-sided, thick, fancy-looking brochure was already distributed the Monday after the vote, which means they would have had to do everything on it. They would have had to do everything on it Friday, and I don't think they are physically capable of doing that. I don't think it was done on Friday. I think this was done in advance and waiting in the wings, which I think means that they already knew the outcome of the vote on mountain biking in Watchung, and that they never intended to consider granting us park access there, and that they were deliberately lying to the public for 3 years. And I think that the cycling citizens, as well as anybody else who's interested in fair government policy, they should look at this as, this is essentially, I mean, I don't say it's proof, it's evidence, there's a conspiracy. No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, it's an indicator that they already intended the vote to go some way. If they had a whole crap load of these sitting around in a box, waiting to be put out somewhere, you don't do that with no mountain biking. You don't do that unless you intend to not allow mountain biking, right? So, if it really was up in the air, 50-50, whatever you want to call it, they would still be printing and editing these, all right? Instead, they're being distributed, or they already are distributed at county parks. the very, like, next workday after the vote. I find that hard to believe, don't you?